Alrighty guys, so as promised, here it is. This is going to be a 13700K gaming overclock guide. So a couple things before we begin. First off, this is based off the Asus AOIC integrated into the BIOS. So if you have another motherboard, you will not be able to follow these settings. So if you have a Strix motherboard, one of the higher end motherboards that come with AOIC, then follow this guide and I will show you how to overclock your CPU and get some really nice performance out of it. My 12700K overclock guide for gaming was a hit, did really well. I had hundreds of positive comments on that, so I thought it would be good to go ahead and make a 13700K gaming overclock as well. Most of the gamers that are going to 13th gen are going to fall right in the middle, the happy medium. So the 1300K is the happy medium CPU, and it's priced reasonable for the performance. The 13900K is going to be out of a lot of people's price ranges, and they're going to settle for the 13700K, which is completely fine. It's an awesome CPU. Okay, so before we begin, I'll go over some of the specs on the PC. So this is a small form factor build, so it's an NR200 case from Cooler Master. CPU, obviously 13700K. GPU, Asus TUF Gaming RTX 3090. Cooling the CPU, we have a Arctic Freezer 280 millimeter AIO. For RAM, we are using Trident DDR5 6400 CL32 RAM. And the power supply is a Cooler Master SFX 850 watts. So I won't delay, I'll get right into the overclocking. So for those who are lucky and have a BIOS setup like this with your AIOC or Artificial Intelligence Overclocking guide, first thing you want to do when you get into your BIOS and you just got your computer, whether you bought it pre-built or you built it yourself, you're going to be in the get yourself into the BIOS. So once you're in the BIOS here, if you have any CPU fan errors and you're not sure how to fix that, pretty much you just go to monitor, fan speed monitor, and for CPU fan speed, you want to make sure that's click to ignore, and that'll get rid of your CPU error. All right, so to start on this overclock, you're going to be clicking AIOC guide up here. You need to read this and follow the directions. Okay, so we'll go over it. So load UEFI defaults by pressing F5 and then press F10. So F5 is going to load the defaults, F10 is going to save it, and it's going to reboot your system. And then once you're in the operating system, if you don't have it already downloaded, download the Cinebench R23 benchmark workload stress test program. You're going to run that for your 10 minutes. Okay, so once you run that for your 10 minutes, it will generate a cooling score. Basically, I'll show you in a sec here. It's going to score how well effectively your cooling is, and that's where this overclocking is going to take place. It's going to actually overclock and base it upon your cooling that you have in the computer. So next step, after the test has been run for the desired time, reboot the system, then go back in the BIOS. Okay, so next up, you'll set the core ratio function to optimized. The motherboard proceed to adjust the overclocking settings according to the cooler score, like I just said. All right, and then you'll save. Okay, so you'll end up doing this, enable AI, and then you'll go ahead and click yes. I already did it, so I'm not going to click it. Once you click that, you'll have some changes in your BIOS. Okay. All right, so you'll have this will be changed. You'll have AI optimized here and AI optimized here. Next up, will be your XMP. So you want to enable XMP. Previously on the 12th gen CPUs, I had some issues with enabling XMP. Maybe some compatibility issues where I would enable it and it wouldn't actually go to the speed of which the RAM could run, and the motherboard could support that speed. But on 13th gen, that's not the case anymore. It looks like they completely fixed it, at least in my opinion. Looks like they completely fixed it, and it's awesome. Our Z690i here can support up to 6400. I'm sure you can overclock higher than that, but it goes up to 6400 for stock RAM speed. So yeah, so the Trident is rated for 6400, so we have it set. So it brings it to 6400. I've got some nice good timings here. CL32 right here. So your BIOS will now look like this. Okay, before we exit the BIOS, a couple things to go over here. Cooler score. This is where after you did your Cinebench test, it determined a cooler score for you. So for this 280 millimeter, it determined that I get 177 points, and the automatic overclock that's going to be applied is going to be based upon that actual score. So if I were to get 200, the overclock would actually be more aggressive. Very smart technology. Overclocking is getting easier and easier, and less headaches. In this video, we're just doing very basic terms so the average user can understand. We don't need to throw out all these technical terms or anything to confuse anybody. People want to get their PCs, they want to just get it overclocked, get more performance, and not have to go through all these menus and try to figure out or understand what the person that's doing the guide is trying to say. So this is a very basic, we'll call it the dummy version of overclocking. Very, very basic. All right, so other thing here, so core voltage. So you're probably saying, wow, 1.483 is a high. So what this is doing is actually setting an adaptive voltage. So I've actually talked to one of the guys at Asus that works with the motherboards, and he explained it. Their voltage is going to fluctuate significantly, but as you increase workload or performance, like you're doing like video rendering, that core voltage is going to come down. For example, if I run Cinebench, my core voltage goes to about 1.35. All right. Same if I benchmark using the CPU-Z benchmark program, my core voltage will drop down. So if it says 1.483, 1.5, the CPU is very lightly loaded, and if I remember or read correctly, these CPUs can take a lot more voltage than 1.5. I've seen up to 1.7. Not saying you should push it that high, but they're more than capable. So hopefully that answers your questions, your concerns about having a higher voltage. Like I said, any stress tests or anything like that, that voltage is going to come down to a very safe voltage. All right, so you just enabled AOIC, you got your XMP loaded, and you are ready to go here. So, all right, these are right here some of the numbers that I've just been messing around with, but these will be in auto. You can just leave those in auto. All right, and then come down to AI features. All right, so here is your optimism scale. So after you enable all the settings I just talked about, go ahead and boot back into the operating system and run a benchmark, like run your Cinebench test, and notice a difference in performance. You'll definitely see an increase in your score and Cinebench, and that'll be like your baseline. Basically, Asus has basically giving you a base overclock. They actually, it's pretty good at how much it learns and understands your system and gives you a nice, good performance bump. But there is room for improvement. It's this one-click overclock is going to give you a base, but luckily you can actually edit it and add more to it. So this optimism scale is basically going to take that overclock that ASUS has set via AOIC and increase the intensity of it. So it's going to get more aggressive. Let me show you an example. So you'll see this when you look at this. This will say 100. All right. So if you look at 100 here, you'll see that per the settings for my performance cores, for the first 3 cores, 5.7. If we got, and then 5 cores, we're utilizing 5 cores, 5.5, and all core still 5.5. Okay, so for the efficiency cores, E-cores, the first 3 cores, 44, all right? And if you go to 5, still the same, 44. And utilizing all cores is actually going to clock down to 4,200 megahertz. And you can see the numbers here. All right, 5.7, 5.7, 5.7, 5.5. Yep. So these are when you go full load, full tilt. This will actually be 5.5 all core. All right. So set adaptive voltage 1.439. Remember, this changes significantly. All right. And then start there at 100. All right. Go ahead and go back into your operating system. Do a Cinebench test. Get your temps. Monitor everything, your voltages, see how everything went, and go from there. And then this is kind of just an experiment. Remember, no 2 CPUs are the same. So someone might be able to increase their optimism scale higher than someone else. Maybe you can't go more than 100. Cooling has to do with that. There's some other variables, but keep that in mind. For me, my optimism scale changes with my location. So currently with this video, I'm in my massive gaming closet, has very little ventilation. So I found that 106 was a safe spot for me to go. And if you saw the changes here, if you looked, now my efficiency cores for the first 3 are 45. So I made some changes here. Okay. So keep in mind, depending on the cooling solution that you are using, your cooler score over here, right here, might be higher, and it might have set your P cores and E cores to a higher frequency than what's shown here. All right. So I'll tell you, when I take my computer and I'm benchmarking upstairs with the AC on, with significantly cooler ambient temperature, my cooler score goes higher, and I'm able to increase my optimism scale. At one point, I think I was able to increase it to 125 actually, with some with the AC on as low as possible. I think it was 55 degrees in the house. So I was able to get that optimism scale that high. Ideally, I don't think people are going to be trying to keep their room at 55 degrees. Maybe they want to. But we are still on a 280 millimeter AIO, and it is an ITX motherboard. It's a little bit held back. This is not even considered. You can overclock on this, but it's not actually. If you look at ASUS motherboards, it's not under the overclocking section of motherboards. But it is a motherboard that's going to be in most people's price ranges for an ITX build. And for its size, it's very good, very powerful, and you can get some good overclocks with it. So if you look over here, nice little prediction. So make it real easy for you. All right, so the P cores here. So on light loading, so 5.7 gigahertz. And then when we do like a full benchmark test, it'll clock it down to 5.580. All right. So on the efficiency cores here, All right, light loading, we're not really doing much, just putt-putting around, 4,500 megahertz. And when we do benchmark or yeah, stress testing, the CPU will clock down to 4240. Okay.
Okay guys, so we are in the operating system. As I've just previously shown you, I changed my optimism scale to 106 as I found that was a very happy medium for performance and temperatures being in the current room that I'm in. And I'll say this again, yours might vary, and that's for you to experiment with how much you want to change your optimism scale. You can have fun with it. If you're in a cooler room, you might be able to increase that optimism scale further than what I was able to do in the room I'm in right now. So, uh, with that being said, we got a couple of my favorite programs in front of me here on the screen. So we have our CPU ID hardware monitor, where you can see a bunch of stuff that's going on with your PC, and then we have our little quick CPU and bench stress test that we're going to do here. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and let's go over this program here. So the first thing you see, vCore. Remember adaptive voltage, our max, we hit 1.5, and we're at 1.35, 1.483. But if you come down here and you look at the CPU utilization, we are barely using this CPU at all. All right, so keep that in mind. Uh, 35, 36 watts here. So you'll see in a moment that'll come down once the load goes up here. All right, all right. Chassis fans here. All right, and uh, all our temperatures for peak cores and E cores. So I'm in a pretty warm room right now, and on this 280 millimeter, excuse me, 280 millimeter AIO, they're very cool. All right, so coming down here, if I could just state CPU 29, 30 watts here, very low CPU utilization, and you can see all the clock speeds here. My power options is set to balanced. There's no reason to have performance on there. So you'll see all these boosting up, 5.7, 5.7. But keep in mind, this does not mean that I'm running 5.7 gigahertz all core. They're just boosting up, so it can be misleading. Same thing with the E-cores. I am not running 4,500 megahertz all core. And once we do this stress test, you'll see all those come down, and it'll actually show you what you are um, doing speed-wise all core. Okay, the rest of it I don't really care too much about. All right, so let's go ahead and stress the CPU out here. All right, stress it out. Boom. There it is. As you just stated here, 5.5 gigahertz all core and 4.2 gigahertz all core on the E cores. All right. Over here is where each of them have boosted up to. This is the max boost that each one will hit. So don't get confused on that. It would be awesome if this thing could run 6 gigahertz all core. It's just not going to probably happen on an AIO, probably not even on custom water. So just keep that in mind here. But yeah, these are just inflated what each core can boost up to. Okay, 100% CPU utilization. Okay, this is stressing it out. All right, if you come over here, look at that. vCore 1.359 volts. All right, okay, so our temperatures maintaining here. All right, 224 watts being pulled right now. All right, okay, yep, so and it's doing a great job maintaining at 91C. All right, we'll go ahead and stop that stress test here. Okay. And I don't know if you heard that, but I have my fans in the PC set to PWN, post width modulation. Basically, it just means auto. The 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 workload has increased, the fans increase. The workload decreases, the fans decrease. So they spin up. The more stress you put on the system, the faster they're going to spin up to a certain point. I think the max RPM is like 1970 on these fans. I am running um, Lee and Lee fans here. I have one set or two 120s and two 140s. There's two 140s on the AIO radiator. Okay. Okay, just a reminder again, if increase your optimism scale, right? And your temperatures were still pretty low and you thought you could push it more, go ahead and push it more. See how far you can go. Um, you go up to a point where it'll just crash, and then that's the stopping point. Now you have to dial it back just a little bit, and then I recommend go test some games out and push this 13700K, and if it crashes again, just go back a little bit. Okay. So for those that um, found the limit there, but they want to even get even more performance out of it, you can go ahead and go into Intel Extreme Tuning Utility. So say 109 on the optimism core was good for on a Cinebench stress test, but 110 crashed. So you bring it back to 109. All right. You're like, okay, now, but I still want to see, can I get a little bit more out of that 109 optimism scale? And yes, you can. So you come over to, let me just uh, get the program over there. Hold on. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. Took a little bit. And there we go. Full screen. If you haven't updated your Intel Extreme Tuning Utility and it doesn't look like this, go ahead and update it. This is the most updated one. All right, so as you can see right here, these are all your max boost speeds that you're going to hit. This is not 6 gigahertz one core and then 5.7 gigahertz all core. That might be confusing to some people. It's not. I wish it was, but it's not. These are just the max the CPU can boost up to per each core. I am actually I'm waiting on the parts to come in. I actually am building a full custom water cooled PC, and I'm going to see just how much we can push this 13700K on water. I think we can get. It's hard to really guess, but I think we might be able to get 5.7 all core. We'll see. It's just going to be trial and error there. All right, so going back to the optimism scale. So 110 failed, but 110 passed. So now you're like, well, I want more. So you come into Intel Extreme Tuning Utility, and what you can do is you can mess around with some of these sliders here. Now, keep in mind, I know on here, these do default back when you shut the computer off. So what I recommend doing is saving it, and then you can actually do a hotkey setup here. So for example, let's go ahead and I think I have, you see it says 4545454444424242. Let's go ahead and see if changes here. Okay. All right, there we go. Just like that. I have a hotkey set up. So if I am in a game, at a certain game, and I know I can crank it up a little more, all I have to do is hit that hotkey. So mine's Control Shift 1, and now I've increased my E-cores even further, so I can get you a little bit more performance. I tend to just game at the optimism scale set point, and um, just leave it at that. But if you want a little bit more, just to get the absolute, max out of your CPU without going over and crashing, that's something you can do too. And those can be, remember, you can go ahead and go into profile pairing, and you'll just, after you save, remember, you have to save it first right here. So you save, name it, okay? Then you come into add hotkey, and then you'll just select what kind of hotkey you want. So I just kept the default. So here, Control Shift F1, and you would have this gaming OC. Okay, it's already set, so we don't have to do that. You would hit OK, and then um, every time you restart your computer, you can just. It might be inconvenient for some people, but it's 3 keys, and depending on the game, you might be able to run that clock speed in one game, but it might crash in another game. I guess it really depends on the how much CPU usage you're using in that particular game, and probably your resolution too. So probably have more issues with 1080p. If I have to guess. All right, so that's basically XMP. Yeah, I found out that messing with these without doing the automatic uh, overclock or the optimism scale, messing with these made it crash. I haven't messed with any of these temperature or anything like that. These are all you know automatically filled in. It does all the work for you, and you can really get a lot of performance out of your CPU with very little effort. You don't need to mess around with voltage. You know troubleshoot, like, oh, try like 1.3 volts, 1.25 volts, test, crash, do it again, test, crash, and keep doing that, and then try to find the optimal voltage. Adaptive voltage is the way to go here. Okay, so all right, so that's a really quick guide for you guys. Very basic, easy terms for the average person to understand. I hope I didn't confuse anybody. Sometimes I confuse myself, but uh, there's no reason to go into all these technical terms because the average person isn't going to know what you're talking about. So this is a very basic guide. This overclock that I did, um, the to get my highest score, I was done um, upstairs with the air conditioning on. So remember, the cooler you can get it, the more performance you can get out of it, basically. So for my time spy score, I scored 23,600 in time spy, and in Cinebench I did 32,100 something. I didn't really mess around too much with Cinebench, but the time spy score is very great, very good. Um, so just for reference, um, my 12700K in time spy scored a 18,200, and in Cinebench was 24,439. So the 13,700K is vastly better than the 12,700K. Excuse me, the 12,700K. Just huge leap in performance between the two. Um, and I am going to be so that when my new water cooled PC is fully built, I get it all up and running. We're going to be testing out 13700K and a 13900K, and we're going to crank that 13900K all the way up as much as possible. I want to get them. I want to see what is the most we can get um, performance wise out of that, and I'll be using an Asus Z690E motherboard, so it shouldn't be as restricted as this Z690i motherboard here. So we'll see how that goes, and make sure you guys stay tuned, like and subscribe the video. um, and leave a comment if you if you see things I need to change in here, like you didn't like something or you like something, just leave a comment. Let me know. All right, appreciate that, guys. All right, as always, thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one. Have a good day.